When I finally entered the kitchen, Jamie was already there, preparing French toast as if he'd been cooking in my kitchen for years. He was barefoot, hair damp from his shower, humming something quietly to himself. He turned when he heard me. "Morning," he said with a warm smile. "Hope it's okay. I thought you deserved having breakfast made for you." That made me laugh a short, surprised sound. I could get accustomed to this. He placed a plate before me. Perfect golden French toast topped with sliced strawberries. "Then let me spoil you while I'm here." The way he said it was gentle, but something in his voice lingered, that thread of tension again, subtle but unmistakable. We ate slowly, discussing trivialities, at first the weather, his upcoming graduation, a documentary series he'd been watching. But occasionally, I'd notice his eyes on me watching, as if waiting for something, or perhaps hoping I'd speak first. I didn't, not yet. After breakfast, I asked if he'd help me sort through some boxes in the attic, a task I'd been postponing for months. He agreed immediately. I think we both needed the distraction. We worked side by side for hours, uncovering containers filled with holiday ornaments, photo albums, forgotten books. At one point, I discovered a weathered cigar box containing letters from my ex-husband, tender, awkward notes from our early marriage. I stared at them momentarily before gently closing the lid and setting it aside. Jamie noticed. "Was it difficult?" he asked. "What?" "Not the leaving. Being left. That struck me." I looked at him. He wasn't teasing or judging. He was asking like someone who genuinely wanted to understand. "Harder than I ever admitted," I said. "But eventually, you stop searching for what departed. You simply learn to live with the space it once occupied." He nodded. "I think I understand that. I don't know who moved first. Perhaps it was me. Perhaps it was him." But suddenly we were standing closer than before, the air between us denser, weightier. I reached for a photo album on the shelf above us, and my hand brushed against his. We both froze, suspended in that contact. He looked up at me. "Sophia." My name and his voice awakened something deep within me. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Instead, I stepped back slowly, deliberately, until I sat down on the edge of an old trunk. The light from the small attic window fell across his face, revealing the uncertainty there, but also the hope. "Sit," I said softly. He did, kneeling before me as if afraid a single wrong move would shatter whatever fragile moment this had become. "I've been trying to understand what this is," I whispered. "And it doesn't make sense, Jamie. It's unexpected. It's strange, but it's also honest." He nodded, his hands resting on his knees, waiting. "I've spent so many years trying to be who I'm expected to be," I said. "And for one weekend, I want to stop pretending I don't feel things." There was a silence between us, not awkward, but tender, filled with possibility. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "I just wanted you to know that being with you feels different. Safe, authentic." That word authentic resonated through my heart, and then gently his hand found mine. Not rushed, not demanding, just connection. And I let it remain there. We didn't say much more that afternoon. We returned to sorting boxes, but the energy had transformed. We were careful with each other. Every word, every glance carried new significance. There was something delicate about the day, like a tightrope stretched between two hearts that hadn't expected to meet in the middle. As evening fell, and the rain finally ceased, we sat on the back porch wrapped in quilts, drinking hot chocolate, watching the last daylight fade from the sky. "I leave tomorrow," he said quietly. "I know. Are you okay with that?" I looked at him. "I don't know," I said. "But I know I'll remember this." He smiled. Me too. And for the first time in years, I felt something approaching wholeness. Not because I had found someone to complete me, but because someone had seen me exactly as I was, and still chose to stay for a while, even if just for one weekend. Monday morning arrived like the gentle exhale after a long breath, still soft and filled with that unspoken heaviness of a farewell. I stood at the kitchen counter pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Jamie was upstairs finishing his packing. The house already felt emptier, though we hadn't even departed yet. The atmosphere between us had changed, not dramatically, but in a quiet, settled way. Something had been expressed, even without many words, and something had been felt deeply in a place I hadn't accessed in years. He descended the stairs, backpack over his shoulder, his jacket sleeves pushed halfway up his forearms. He looked every bit the young man he was, yet something in his eyes seemed older. Perhaps because of what we'd shared, or perhaps because I was finally seeing him without the filter of what was appropriate or expected. "Your sister texted. She be here in 15 minutes, I said, sliding a mug toward him. "Thanks," he replied, voice soft. We drank in silence, watching the morning light stream through the kitchen window. The rain had finally stopped, and the entire garden glistened with that freshly washed radiance. "I'm not sure what to say," Jamie said finally. "You don't need to say anything," I replied. "Not today." He looked at me then, not with hesitation, not with confusion, but with a calm steadiness I hadn't anticipated. "I think I'll always remember this weekend," I nodded. "Me too." There was a long pause, the kind that doesn't need filling, just holding. He reached across the counter, his fingers brushing mine, one final touch, gentle and intentional. It didn't linger, but it remained with me. I walked into the door, and we stood there momentarily before opening it. He turned to me. "Can I ask one thing?" "Of course. Do you regret any of it?" My throat tightened. I thought about everything, the meaningful conversations, the emotional connection, that fragile spark of something more, and how for once I had allowed myself to feel without apology. "No," I said. "I don't regret it, but I also recognize it. Can't be more than what it was." He nodded slowly. "I understand." We embraced a long, silent hug. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't familial either. It was something entirely its own. His sister's car arrived, and he walked toward it without looking back. I stood at the door, arms wrapped around myself, and watched as he disappeared down the quiet street. When I returned inside, the house felt still again. But I wasn't the same woman I had been on Friday. Later that night, I sat on the sofa, the same one we had shared that first evening, and allowed myself to feel the quiet resonance of something I had nearly forgotten, the awareness that I was still capable of being moved, that even in the second half of life, unexpected things can touch you. Not always in anticipated ways, not always in ways you can explain, but they matter. I don't know if I'll ever see Jamie the same way again, or if we'll ever discuss that weekend. What I do know is that for those few days I allowed my heart to speak again. I let someone see the woman beneath the years, beneath the routine, beneath the silence. I turned 56 last spring, and I've spent most of my existence following a predictable path. I wed in my early 20s, raised 2 boys, remained in the coastal town where I was born, and worked as a museum docent for nearly 25 years. Security and consistency were my definitions of love, something dependable and steady, not fierce or unexpected. I found comfort in routine and knowing what tomorrow would bring. Until 3 days changed everything. I never imagined something like this would happen to me. Please learn from my experience. It began with an unexpected text from my sister Elena. She was caught in a difficult situation, Her former partner had cancelled his weekend with their son Jamie at the last minute, and she needed to travel immediately for a family emergency. Elena and I weren't particularly close during childhood, but over time we reconnected through occasional family gatherings and holiday visits. When she asked if Jamie could stay at my house until Monday morning, I agreed without hesitation. My home had plenty of room, and I welcomed the companionship. Jamie was always reserved and thoughtful, the type of teenager who observes more than he speaks at family reunions. He was 18, slender but strong, with thoughtful eyes that suggested he understood more than he revealed. He reminded me somewhat of my younger son's first serious girlfriend, perceptive, gentle, always watching and absorbing. When he arrived Friday evening carrying a backpack over one shoulder, his greeting came with a tentative smile. "Hi, Aunt Sophia. Thanks for letting me stay." I returned his smile. "Of course, honey. Make yourself comfortable." I had prepared a homemade shepherd's pie, something comforting and hearty, and we ate at the kitchen table, just the two of us. My house has been remarkably still since the boys left for college. It's one of those charming craftsman bungalows, always carrying the subtle scent of cinnamon and aged hardwood. That evening it felt more alive. We discussed his college plans, books, even touched briefly on how he was coping since his parents' separation. His voice was measured, considerate. Unlike many young men his age, he truly listened. I remember noticing that, reflecting on how rare such attentive presence had become in my daily life. That evening, I prepared the spare bedroom for him. Clean linens, additional blankets, a small basket of essentials I always maintain for guests. His gratitude seemed so genuine, it momentarily surprised me. There was something in the way he looked at me, as though he perceived beyond just a middle-aged woman doing a favor. I dismissed the thought. I changed into my usual night clothes. Simple flannel pants and a loose top, nothing special, just comfortable attire, and settled in the living room with a cup of herbal tea. It was nearly 10:30 when I heard a soft knock at the doorframe. "Hello," Jamie said, peeking in. "Would it be all right if I joined you for a while? I'm not particularly sleepy." "Of course," I replied, motioning toward the other end of the sofa. "To be honest, it's nice having someone around." He entered hesitantly, a throw blanket wrapped around his shoulders like a cloak. He appeared younger then, almost childlike. But when he sat down, not far from me, I experienced an unexpected flutter in my chest. It made no sense, so I ignored it. We selected a historical documentary, the kind with panoramic landscapes and soothing narration. I barely watched it. I was too conscious of the subtle warmth between us, the quiet breathing, how the sofa cushion shifted whenever he moved slightly. At one moment, my hand was resting on the cushion between us, and his arm lightly grazed it. Perhaps deliberately, I wasn't certain. I glanced at him and found him already looking at me. There was nothing inappropriate in his expression. No boldness, no arrogance, just this quiet, almost vulnerable openness, as if waiting for me to turn away. But I didn't. We maintained that gaze a moment longer than we should have. I broke it with a gentle laugh, more to reset the moment than anything else. "Getting tired?" I asked. He shrugged slightly. "There's a comfortable bed waiting for you." "Yeah," he said, standing slowly, the blanket slipping from his shoulder. "Thanks again for everything." When he turned to leave, he paused briefly before walking out. I remained there, overwhelmed by unexpected emotions. Confusion, guilt, a peculiar yearning I hadn't experienced in years. I didn't understand what any of it meant, but something had transformed that night. Something unspoken, yet undeniably real. And I wasn't sure which frightened me more, that he had felt it too, or that I had imagined it entirely. The following morning I woke earlier than usual. My thoughts had been restless throughout the night, examining every moment from the previous evening. The way Jamie looked at me, that gentle brush of skin, his momentary hesitation before leaving. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination, a manifestation of loneliness. That quiet emptiness that accumulates after years of living alone, not even realizing how long it's been since someone truly saw you. I secured my robe and walked quietly to the kitchen, starting the tea kettle and gathering ingredients for breakfast. The house still held the morning chill, and I opened the side window just enough to catch the fragrance of rain-dampened flowers. Minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. "Morning," Jamie said, voice still rough with sleep. He wore a faded university sweatshirt and flannel pants, hair tousled. He looked so young, yet something in his expression made him seem more mature than his years. That observant quality again. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said, trying to sound casual. "Did you sleep well?" "Yeah," he said, settling onto the kitchen stool. "Better than expected, actually." I placed a plate before him and poured 2 cups of tea, one plain, one with honey, and lemon for me. We ate quietly at first, a silence that didn't feel uncomfortable, just filled with unspoken thoughts. Then he said something completely unexpected. "You seemed melancholy last night." I blinked. "Melancholy?" He nodded. "Not overtly sad or anything, just ... oscillated." His words resonated deeper than anticipated. I studied his face, searching for any hint of mockery, but he was entirely sincere. "Well," I said after a pause, "you're not wrong." I hadn't intended to admit it, not so plainly. But it was true. And I was tired of pretending otherwise. He offered a small, thoughtful nod and didn't pursue it further, just continued sipping his tea. The day passed in ordinary moments. He helped me organize my gardening shed, and I taught him how to make my grandmother's apple tart. We discussed films, philosophy, even his aspirations of possibly becoming an architectural designer someday. The age difference between us seemed to diminish beneath the weight of authentic conversation. Later, that afternoon, light rain began falling. Grey clouds, distant thunder. I lit several candles and selected a gentle playlist, the kind with classic jazz standards and smooth piano. It transformed the house into something more intimate. Dreamlike. Jamie sat cross-legged on the living room floor, examining a collection of travel journals I'd retrieved from the bookcase. One of the older volumes from when my boys were small, before the separation, before everything changed. "You look genuinely happy here," he said, indicating a photo of me and the boys hiking in Scotland. "I was," I said quietly. "It was a beautiful day." "You still have that expression sometimes," he said. I looked at him. "What expression?" He glanced up. "That one from the photo. Like something wonderful caught you off guard." My throat tightened. No one had made such an observation about me in years. I sat beside him on the carpet, feeling the warmth of the candles, the gentle weight of memories surrounding us. "Jamie," I said, "may I ask you something?" "Sure. Last night when we were watching that documentary ... was I imagining things?" He studied me for a long moment, then slowly shook his head. "No," he said. "You weren't." That silence again, heavy, charged. "But," he added gently, "I wasn't going to mention it. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't," I whispered. "It was just unexpected. We were sitting close now, too close. But I didn't move. Neither did he." "I don't understand what's happening," I said, my voice low. "I just know that it's been a long time since I've felt truly seen. And last night, I felt something change." He nodded. "Me too. I looked at him, at the gentle remnants of boyhood still visible in his features, and the emerging contours of the man he was becoming. And I felt this acute ache, not precisely desire, but recognition of connection, of two souls who hadn't expected to find each other in that moment, but somehow had. I stood slowly. We should get some sleep tonight. It's been a strange day. Yeah, he said, rising too, his voice soft. Strange, but kind of wonderful too. As he turned to leave, I reached out briefly and touched his arm. Thank you, I said. He looked at me. For what? For seeing me. He gave a small, almost solemn smile. Anytime. And then he disappeared down the hallway, leaving me standing in the flickering candlelight, heart beating in a way I hadn't felt in years. The rain continued the next morning, gentle and persistent. It tapped against the windows like a soft reminder that the world outside continued turning, even though everything within me felt suspended. I remained in bed longer than usual, gazing at the ceiling, hands resting lightly across my collarbones. There was a curious mixture of peace and tension throughout my body, as if something had been set in motion, and I didn't know how to halt it, or even if I wanted to.